I see a lot of hate these days going around in developer circles, particularly with junior devs. They're hating on frameworks, languages, editors, you name it, whatever style of programming, paradigm, anything like that. Nothing wrong with hating on something that's worse than what you do. The problem is, like, a lot of these people, it's not their own opinions. They're just like repeating some other more experienced YouTuber's opinion. They're like just a Tor node relaying a connection, you know? It's not their own thoughts. And they haven't really tried these things themselves. And these people who are often very like, oh, you gotta use NixOS, it's the best, Rust is so safe, like, they're so opinionated about that thing, and then they kind of low-key suck at developing. I would infinitely rather hire a C# developer who's just like spent all their time knowing the whole standard library and all of that, and like, whatever, C#, Java, maybe it's not the most optimally designed language, but I'd rather you be cracked at it than your tool carrying you, and you're not even that good at that tool. You know, same thing with Vim and Emacs. People always like trying to rage bait me into saying something about Emacs or VS Code or Helix. It doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong with any of those editors. That's like, you shouldn't be hating on someone else's editor if you haven't like become a master of it yourself, you know? Like, Emacs is one thing. Yeah, you can customize the shit out of that with Emacs Lisp and like have a godly workflow. But you're saying don't even criticize VS Code? Yeah, because VS Code people, there are a lot of ways you can customize VS Code. There's a ton of plugins, there's snippets, there's the command palette, you can do a lot. A lot of VS Code users actually, I've seen work faster than Vim users. And I know other people that'll agree with me. They're like, you can get a workflow, a crazy setup going no matter what. It just bothers me to see so much like serious superiority with people who don't really know what they're talking about. Another great example is R versus Markdown. Not Markdown, sorry, Python. So Python they're both data science languages, right? Python has kind of replaced R, and I'm not an expert on this, but I'd imagine it's because Python has a lot more library support for like bigger picture applications, maybe like web experiences, I don't know, the web APIs, and I know R can do machine learning, but I'm assuming that's the reason. Like, Python has just got this big ecosystem of other ways you can work in, and it's more familiar to a lot of people. The thing is, like, you can do anything you can do in Python in R, and it's way more about your data science knowledge, right? I would much rather, again, work with someone who's like knows the stats really well, knows what statistical tests to do, knows what all the tests do and mean, than someone who's like, yeah, Python is way better, Pandas way more optimal. Sorry, there's fighter jets going overhead now. We're officially in a military seizure state, I guess. Yeah, people are hating on R, and they're really not that good data scientists. And I know a lot of amazing data scientists that use R, and that's just because that's what they learned. It was what's popular at the time. And it's far less about what the slight advantages of the language are, and far more about how good you are at the language and how much you've put in to master it. And I'm not saying like, oh, you should go learn R or Python, you know, that's kind of like the Vim of the data science world. Maybe it is, I don't know, I've never tried it, but it's not so much about what like slight optimizations in a tool you pick, and it's way more about how much effort you put in. And even though Python may be more optimal in this day and age for whatever reason, I don't know, maybe it's faster, better library interop, like, if you just want to focus on data science and your school is teaching you R, you can get really good at R, you can do everything you need to in R, you can show all the statistics, like 99% of workflows, like, straight up R might have been easier, I don't know. But yeah, I guess the other big, huge debate, right, is C++ and Rust. And I see people like throwing shade at the other side all the time. More so Rust people like saying, oh, it's not safe. Once in a while you get someone who's like, Rust is a scam. It's like it's got all these problems with it. I'm not heavily, like, I've used both languages, but I wouldn't consider myself remotely near qualified enough to make any kind of assumption about stuff like that and throw shade at the other side. And again, it's like, yeah, maybe Cargo has got great features. It's really fast and nice, and the borrow checker and all that stuff. Amazing design, but C++, it's not like an esoteric language. Like, the whole modern world is kind of carried by C++. It's like, this isn't some garbage language. It's got its problems, but it's kind of like, if you let all your skill be because of an external tool, if you let the language or the framework's features kind of carry you and just rely on that abstraction rather than understanding something, it's not a good habit at all, especially if you're a junior dev. And I'm just getting into this industry, like, I still don't know a whole lot of stuff, so I don't like to make big sweeping assumptions like this. There are totally people at all different levels who they understand this in the same way that it doesn't matter as much what language you use. But I guess another thing is like the whole web disaster right now. Like, you can keep learning more and more abstractions on top of it. Like Svelte and Solid are great examples, right? So if you don't know, basically they're frameworks that are not JavaScript at all. They're kind of JavaScript. They like compile to JavaScript, kind of like the good old days of CoffeeScript. And they're like a weird compiler optimization on top of it. It makes it very ergonomic to do a lot of things. It's a very nice experience to use those frameworks. But at the same time, there's so much abstraction, and like, it's hard to really tell what's going on exactly anymore. I mean, like you can, but, and same thing with React. I mean, like, under the hood, it's all just very clever JavaScript, and there are videos about how the React DOM renderer and all that stuff works. It's just like towering up abstraction and then sitting on top of it and then being like, your tower of abstraction sucks. And they don't understand like exactly how the canvassing and whatever is going on under the hood of React. They have no idea anymore. You can kind of tell who's the more experienced dev by who doesn't make those comments, you know? When I post certain things, like I was making a game a while ago in Lua, in the Love2D game library, and a bunch of people were like, oh, why aren't you using C++, Raylib, why aren't you using, I don't know, Bevy, why aren't you using XYZ, more advanced, more involved game engine? And there are all great arguments for all of those, I mean, I'm sure, but the more experienced, the more, I don't know, seasoned in the industry, and I don't want to say that totally because there might just be some people that really, really love Raylib. The more experienced people said, anyway, they were all recommending other frameworks, but other people just don't. They're like, oh, you want to use Love2D, you picked it for whatever reason, you picked this weird dynamic language to write a game in, whatever, man, you just go do that, and you'll maybe figure out why you don't want to do that in the long term, but I'm not gonna get in your way. And I'm not really gonna hate on your language choice at all. Oops, that's totally a dead end. And I think that's what I do now too. I never hate on anyone's language or framework choice, except for like the irony factor of it when it's kind of funny. But yeah, it just comes down to the developer and not the framework really. And like, more seasoned developers end up choosing certain frameworks for sure, because of things like static types or whatever more advanced feature, functional paradigms, stuff like that. But it bothers me when you get a lot of junior devs, no real experience making a big thing. And I'm talking about myself here too, to be clear. And then they're just like, no, you have to use XYZ paradigm because they saw it on some advanced programmers thing. And it's like, yeah, take those conclusions as great info out there, but I don't know, experience it yourself before you go and tell everyone about it.